On Jake Irvin's Major League debut, the Nationals beat the Cubs on a score of 2-1. I'm going to tell you all about Jake Irvin and really, can this guy be one of those breakout studs for the Washington Nationals? I'm going to get to all of that and more after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And today's episode is brought to you by RocketMoney. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnMLB. And thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Ryan Clary, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day. And as we get started with today's show, we're going to hop on Jake Irvin and discuss his debut yesterday, as he was wildly impressive in just one start up in the major leagues. We're going to talk about him to start, and as well as that victory, as that was an electric win for the Washington Nationals. And then we're going to get into this Nationals team, as honestly, looking at this point, would you have expected the Nationals to be this good so far through a month of the season? And we're not a good team, but the expectations were a lot lower, and the Nationals are now breaching those expectations and really making an imprint on this fan base. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit more about Jake Irvin and who I really see in him. But first, we're going to get into yesterday's win and talk about Irvin's debut. And as we discussed yesterday, Jake Irvin is not someone who was widely known. A fourth-round pick out of the University of Oklahoma back in 2018. He's recovered from Tommy John surgery, and he's 26 years old. Only the number 20 prospect in the national system. But as you saw yesterday, and really only coming out there with two pitches, his fastball and his curveball that he really hung on heavily to, he was impressive. And not only was he impressive, he shut down a very good Chicago Cubs lineup, as yesterday he only gave up 2 hits through 4 1/3 inning. He only struck out 3. He walked 4 batters. But honestly, consider this. 4 1/3 inning for your first start ever, going against a very good Chicago Cubs offense. Going up against Marcus Stroman as well with the Chicago Cubs, another tough pitching matchup. He held his own. And when looking at Jake Irvin and what he has done throughout his career down in the minor leagues, this year, 2023, up in AAA, it's probably been the biggest struggle for him, as he's been walking a little more guys than what he was thought to be. Because at this point, a lot of people have kind of tagged him as one of the better command guys in the Nationals farm system. They didn't really expect him to walk too many guys. He has done that a little bit more often this season. But with that, we talk about command issues with Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray at times, back when he was a little bit younger. That's okay for a young guy. And Jake Irvin's only 26. I mean, I say only 26, but at the end of the day, that's pretty young. 26 years old. This is someone who's under team control for the next 7 years. Someone who could be a difference maker in this system. Now, I'm not saying Jake Irvin's going to be some stud, but in his first start, replacing Chad Kuhl, you can't help but kind of think to the future. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that later in the show, in his role and what he could be doing. So you'll want to stick around for that. But talking about Jake Irvin and what he did yesterday, I love the fact that this guy's only got 2 pitches and he leans on them heavily and he balances them out really well. A lot of situations yesterday in about a 1-2 count or a little bit later in the count, he leaned on his fastball, which honestly got a lot of productive outs for this Nationals team. And he helped them win this game, especially considering he only pitched 80 pitches yesterday. Only 81 rather, and only 45 strikes. So his command wasn't even there. He only gave up 2 hits through 4 1/3. And they're not going to allow him to go to 100 pitches a start yet, especially the way that the Nationals kind of baby their arms down in the system. They're not letting them go out there and throw in 100 pitches every 5 days. This isn't Max Scherzer. So it's going to take some time for him to really build up his stamina. But if this wasn't a rebuilding team in a situation to where you don't really need to win now, there's no chance in hell he would have been pulled from that game with runners on first and second with 1 out through 4 and a third inning. But Andres Machado comes in first pitch. It's a double play up the middle. So Andres Machado came in to shut the door and keep that 1-1 tie in effect for the Nationals. And then most importantly, Andres Machado, we haven't really talked a lot about him this offseason. Really, because we've seen it with him. We've seen the ups and downs, and honestly, there's been a lot of downs. Let's just rip that ripcord right now. But from what he has done so far, Davey Martinez loves this stuff. And obviously this front office does as well, because they brought him back this offseason, put him down in AAA after clearing waivers, and now he's back up in the major leagues, and who knows how long he could be here. Because he's sort of that lefty specialist that the Nationals will be utilizing without Anthony Banda, who is now gone. So, where does Andres Machado also fit in this? Because he went 1 2/3 yesterday and honestly looked really good. Now, it wasn't some crazy, outlandish performance from him, but at the end of the day, he helped this team win. And he came in a big moment and 1 pitch, double play, shut the door. And that is kind of the momentum that you would need for a reliever to actually come in situations like that. So when looking at Machado, I'm kind of pairing him in this Irvin conversation because Andres Machado is obviously liked a lot from this staff, from Davey and Mike Rizzo in the front office. It's very obvious at this point. But is this going to be his role? And if it is, can he continue this little run that he's on? Because Andres Machado does have the stuff. He's got the pitches for it. And he is a specialist, I guess you could say, when it comes to getting out left-handed hitters. So when talking about Andres Machado, I just don't really know where he fits into it. But then again, when he does what he did just last night, then that is kind of when you get a little sweet tooth. You start to consider of what this guy can be and what he can do down the road. Similar to Jake Irvin and what he did yesterday. Because Jake Irvin has always been a starter. He's only not started in the minor leagues only a handful of games. He started about 61 games down in the minor leagues. So this guy has been brought up as a starter. But will he continue to be a starter? Is that going to be a role that the Nationals have for him down the line? That's something that Davey Martinez will probably have to continue to think over. Because Chad Kuhl, at times, as it's been a little rougher for him this season, but he also hasn't looked completely terrible, you could say. So there is going to be a discussion in this, but at the end of the day, you would think that if Jake Irvin can put in another quality start just like he did yesterday, it's going to be tough to take him out of that 5th rotation spot, which is where he is right now. And honestly, I'm kind of ready to crown him the king of that 5th start. But I'm going to talk a little bit more later in the show as we get to know Jake Irvin, as we continue to see him down the road. But yesterday in his major league debut, he was wildly impressive, and he has certainly caught my attention because down in the minor leagues this year, I was always kind of talking like, hey, Jake Irvin, I want to see Jake Irvin. But he kind of got roughed up a little bit in AAA. Well, yesterday in the big leagues, he made his impression, and he got my attention completely. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the role I would like to see Jake Irvin in that last segment. But now we got to talk about how this Nationals team has really been foregoing all their expectations because there weren't many. But the Nationals are not doing that bad right now. Still sitting in 5th in the NL East. But considering they're winning 40% of their games compared to last year, this isn't a 100-loss team, I can tell you that. I'll explain that all to you guys and really get into the future of this team and really get into the teeth of this rebuild, as still a lot of people think it's going to be a lot longer. I'm going to tell you why this isn't going to be that long. I'll get into that, but before we do that, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at Rocket Money. And Rocket Money, this is what you want, because I have subscriptions all over the place that I don't even know about. Well, Rocket Money can cancel subscriptions for you that were otherwise tricky or even time consuming. And that is what Rocket Money saves you. Try it free for 30 days, just enough time to try it, and then completely forget about it. In fact, over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. You could be wasting money and not even realizing it. Rocket Money helps you find those forgotten subscriptions so you can stop paying for ones that you don't use. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Stop throwing away your money, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb.com. LockedOnMLB. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. And now we're getting into this Nationals team. As I kind of said, over this offseason, I truly believe that this rebuild wasn't going to be as long as people anticipated. Some people called that crazy because you look at the major league level and how much talent is there up right now. You got Keibert Ruiz, C.J. Abrams, Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, Luis Garcia. Those are really your 5 guys that you are hanging your hat on, that you are tipping your cap for, that you are giving standing ovations for. Those are the 5 guys right now who are really here, who could be part of the foundation moving forward. But like with Jake Irvin last night, there are surprises that could be coming up in the way that organizations like the Atlanta Braves do very well. Spencer Strider being a mid-round pick. Guess what? He's their ace now. I'm not saying Jake Irvin's going to be that, but if he can just be a piece to the puzzle, what does that mean for this team? It means everything. I can tell you that right now. Now, if maybe it's not Jake Irvin, maybe it's name that prospect, maybe it's Jackson Rutledge, who comes up and surprises a lot of people. Not by the end of this year, but by the beginning of next year, opening day, the first series, who knows what Jackson Rutledge could do. But if the Nationals continue to do this draft and develop thing that we also talk about, then this team will be a lot better come the year 2025. And I think by 2025, that is when you will start to see a legit contending team. And I even think we could get a taste of that in 2024. This team in 2023 is not going to be a contender in the postseason. It's not. We'll rip that Band-Aid off right now. If they do, I'll eat my hat. How about that? But when looking at this team and what they do well, this team stays in the game. I hate to say this, but they stay in the fight. Sounds so cliche now, but they do. Who is that towards to? Who should be getting the credit for this? That's not a question for me. But it could be Davey Martinez and what he has done and the leadership that he exposes to these young guys. Guys like Trevor Williams, who you saw last night, if you're watching on TV, they talk highly of him and his leadership asset that he brings. You see Josiah Gray and Mackenzie Gore kind of hovering around Trevor Williams, being that major clubhouse guy. And now we're starting to see with the, whatever you want to call it, the wig and the American flag celebration in the dugout, they're having fun. Last year, you didn't really see a lot of fun. They weren't having fun losing. But at this point in the season, this Nationals team is sitting and winning about 40% of their games, which may sound ridiculous to you, which may sound a little nuts, because a lot of people are like, well, why don't we win 80% of the games like the Tampa Bay Rays? And you're right, we're not them. Just sorry, we aren't. They went through the dark ages just like we are now. But you're starting to see the results of the 2 main things that have happened over the last 2 seasons. Trading away Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. You get back Josiah Gray and Keibert Ruiz. Josiah Gray has been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball this season. And Keibert Ruiz is turning the corner and seemingly gets better every game, it almost feels like. And the pitchers work well with him. The hitting tool is starting to come up and get better. The power is starting to be presented towards him. You're seeing these things click for them. And also, not even to mention the big trade last year, where you have James Wood being a top 15 prospect in really any website that you check, and he's still only in high A. You have Robert Hassel, who's starting to turn the corner after completing his rehab. Now he's up in Double A. You see Elijah Green, a top 5 pick last year. While it has been up and down for him, it hasn't been that bad either. Brady House, over the years, another big-time prospect for this Nationals team. He's killing it down in the minor leagues. Dalen Lyle, all these different guys who are down in the minor leagues, who we have drafted and or traded for, they are starting to turn a corner. This offseason, the Nationals heavily invested in the analytics, and it's starting to pay off. Not only down in the minor leagues, we're starting to see some guys like a Dalen Lyle, who is a very toolsy player, but we really don't have that many expectations for him. At least I didn't. And the reason why I didn't, the Nationals just don't really do that well with random draft picks, a second-round pick. Now, Dalen Lyle was not some nobody prospect. This was a Gatorade Player of the Year out of the state of Kentucky in high school. Not only did he win it once, but he won it twice in Kentucky. Getting drafted out of high school, having Tommy John surgery, and basically your first full year as a pro. He's now coming back, and he's ripping the cover off the baseball, as is Brady House, as is James Wood. Robert Hassel is starting to turn that corner as he continues to get healthier. So all of these guys right now, maybe not Dalen Lyle and Brady House, but James Wood and Robert Hassel. We talk a lot about them. They have lofty, high expectations, as they should. They are high picks. They are high-valued prospects. The Padres aren't giving up those guys for nothing. They gave it up for Juan Soto and Josh Bell to go win a World Series last year. They ultimately fell short. Josh Bell is now out of San Diego. Juan Soto is still there, but he's struggling. But this Nationals team, even beyond the minor league level and looking at the major league level, you're starting to see C.J. Abrams be way more confident in the field and at the plate. Like last night, getting the game-winning hit, the eventual game-winning hit, you could say. Scoring that run. That's the kind of development that the Nationals and their fans will continue to see over this year. And at the end of the day, C.J. Abrams is still only 22 years old. A lot of people have kind of been frustrated with his whole performance, how it hasn't really clicked right away. But it's going to take time. Because I was making this point the other day. If C.J. Abrams was drafted to the Nationals, he would still probably be in AAA at this point. He would not be up in the major leagues doing what he's doing now. So this guy was called up a little prematurely as a Padre last year to replace Fernando Tatis and to add a little juice into that lineup. So what did the Nationals do? They stuck him down in AAA for about 2 weeks, let him get some swings in, and it got him called up to the major leagues to finish last year. Now he's in the major leagues, most likely for good. So with C.J. Abrams, don't be frustrated just because it's not clicking right now. You're already starting to see those wheels turn just a little bit more. You're starting to see him put 2 to 2 together. The hit tool, the getting on base, the better fielding, making the simple things. Luis Garcia, you're starting to see turn a corner just like Abrams. Luis Garcia, how a lot of people, he hasn't really been all that great this year. But again, he's 22 years old. These are guys who will be developing over time. Think back to Ian Desmond. Ian Desmond was not some highly coveted prospect. He wasn't a nobody prospect either, but it took some time for him to develop up in the major leagues. And once he did develop and once he got grounded with the Nationals, it took about 3 to 4 years to see that ultimate big time production that we were seeing back in 2012 and 2013 and years like that. I'm not saying Luis Garcia is Ian Desmond and he's on that track, but he's not fully developed. And I like the scenarios in which he hits. Now, a lot of people complain about how he swings at a lot of first pitches. That's an obvious complaint that we can always talk about. But at the end of the day, Luis Garcia, CJ Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, and Mackenzie Gore, that's the future. And we're starting to see those guys really take a turn up into the major leagues. And it's affecting the way that this Nationals team is going to rebuild and potentially even spend down the road in free agency. We got that off our chest. Now I got to talk about Jake Irvin and really get into what he can be as a starter or a reliever. We're going to talk about him because this is someone who I do believe is a major leaguer, whether it's a starter or a reliever, but I'm going to pinpoint what I truly think he could be. But before we do that, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And it's easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you, and you never take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. Like, for example, during the pandemic, it was a tough time for everyone. A lot of people were stranded in their homes and really just not doing all too much during that pandemic, and it kind of made you feel a little bit down. Therapy can give you the tools to find your balance in your life. That is why I'm telling you guys about my friends from BetterHelp. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp.com, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. And now we get right back into Jake Irvin as I kind of plugged to where, is this guy a starter in the major leagues or is he a reliever? There's two answers to this question. Right now, Jake Irvin is absolutely a starter and should be in the rotation moving forward. Now, if he gets rocked his next start, I'm not pulling the ripcord either and saying go to the bullpen. I'm not up for that yet. He needs to get some time into the major leagues because this is someone that Davey Martinez in the front office talked about a lot this offseason. They liked what they saw. You saw a lot of the beat reporters who were down in spring training really liked the way that Jake Irvin carried himself and just the way that he pitched. So with Jake Irvin right now, there is absolutely no reason for him not to be a starter every 5 days. And if it takes some time to build some stamina, that's perfectly fine as well. Because that's what we did with Josiah Gray. Mackenzie Gore kind of got that treatment last year with the Padres. It's going to take some time to build up that stamina to see what this guy can do over the course of 95 to 100 pitches. Because last night, through 81 pitches, he looked really good against a very good offensive team with the Cubs, only yielding 2 hits through 4 1/3 innings, walking 4. He walked way more than he got hit. And that right there, to me, while it's a little alarming, just walking guys only through 4 1/3 innings, it's still wildly impressive that he only gave up 2 hits. And what if you were to cut down those walks to 2 or to 1 or to 0? Then we'd be talking about a completely different game. He would have probably gotten through that 5th inning and he would have been set up for a winning situation. But he wasn't because he didn't get through 5. So right now, this guy's got to be a starter. But down the road, considering he's only a 2-pitch cat, do I still think he's going to be a starter? Probably not. He's going to have all the opportunities in the world to take advantage of that and to be a starter up in the big leagues. But when you really only have a fastball and a curveball, and then you have a changeup that you mix in as well, but the changeup wasn't really in play, in my opinion. Last night, it kind of was. But down in the minor leagues, it really hasn't been. I just think that's the adrenaline and the juice is flowing in you. As yesterday, his first pitch also was wildly entertaining, considering he just drills Horner right in the back for his very first pitch up in the big leagues. What Jake Irvin showed me was that this guy belongs, whether it's in the starting rotation or in the bullpen. Because right now, as I said, he should be in this starting rotation moving forward. But maybe down the line, if I were to kind of reach into my magic 8-ball, I would guess that he is a backpen bullpen guy, in which is not terrible whatsoever. You see Hunter Harvey was a former starter. He's now a very reliable bullpen guy. It happens. And if it does happen, so what? Jake Irvin is a major leaguer, and he should not be going down to AAA anytime soon, which I'm sure he will at some point, just because that's the way this organization works. We send guys up a lot, and we send them down a lot, just like others. But this guy belongs into the major leagues. So thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we're going to be previewing the Diamondbacks series as we've got Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, and Trevor Williams taking the mound over the weekend. Can the Nationals be a really solid Arizona Diamondbacks team? We'll get into all of that and more on tomorrow's Locked On Nationals. But again, guys, thank you for making us your first listen every day. I will talk to the everydayers another time. Thank you, guys, and have a good one.